But man, when he hears the word God, he thinks of something out in space. Where, he doesn't quite know, but something in space. If the word God in any way conjures within you something that is other than your own wonderful human imagination, you've got the wrong God. If the word Jesus causes you to think of a man who lived 2,000 years ago and died 2,000 years ago and rose 2,000 years ago, you've got the wrong one. You're told Jesus is within you. If he's within me, I should find out exactly where he is in me. And then who is he? Well, I have found him. He is my own wonderful human imagination. That's Jesus. Well, tonight, if I wanted to be in New York, and I put my body down on the bed tonight, when I go to bed, I must assume that I am already in New York. Well, how would I know that I am there? If I am all imagination, I must be wherever I am in imagination. Well, if I am in imagination in New York, now think of the world. Think of California, Southern California, where you place the body. Well, do you see it on the bed as you're thinking? Well, then you're not in New York. Do you see it 3,000 miles away to the west of you? Well, then you are in New York. But were you in New York, you would see the body in your mind's eye 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles. And you'd be thinking from New York rather than thinking of New York. So the whole thing is simply finding out this fantastic power, creative power in man, and how it operates. For there is no problem in the world comparable to this problem of solving the mystery of imagining. For supreme power and supreme wisdom and supreme delight is in store for the one who conquers this mystery. So whether you be in jail, all right, so you're in jail, and you dare to assume that you're free. You aren't going to break through the doors and be picked up and be sent to a longer term. You simply assume that you're free. Who today on death row, many of them prayed that their sons would not be put in the chamber, and they believed their prayers. And so the Supreme Court brings in a verdict, no more killing of men because they kill someone. Whether you approve or disapprove, that's not the point. All things are possible in God's will. All things. So I'm not going to pass any opinion whether this thing is right or wrong. I'm not going to be involved emotionally as to whether they did the right thing or the wrong thing. I only know from personal experience, if I had a son there, I want him free. If he were there, he's not there, but if he was there, I want him free. Regardless of what he did. As one who loves his son, I'd want him free. But I am not going to pass any opinion or any judgment concerning the Supreme Court's decision. The thing is, all things are possible. You tell me what you want, and if it comes within the framework of what I call the golden rule, which is simply doing unto others as you would have another do unto you. If it fits that frame, well then, you are on the right course. Well then, you can't do it physically, no. You don't have the power or the wisdom to do it. But there's something in you which is your essential being. It can do it. It knows exactly how to do it. Can you trust him? Can you trust this being within you to have heard what you heard? I heard it on this level, the request made. And if I heard it on this level, certainly the depth of my own being heard it. And on that depth, he has ways and means I do not have on this level. Therefore, I'm not concerned as to how it's going to work. I only know it will work. By simply assuming that I am already the one I want to be. And if I dare to assume it and remain faithful to it, then it becomes a fact. So imagining, plus this kind of faith, faith in God. And God is your own wonderful human imagination. So faith in God is the way to success. You imagine it as though it were true, and then you walk your way, not knowing how it's going to become true. But it will become true. I invite you to test it. Just try it. Cost you nothing. And if I take from you your gods, then it's a blessing. If you can lose your God, it's a good thing, because the real God you can't lose. And you can never lose being. You can never lose the sense of I am. You can lose everything else, but you can never cease to be aware that you are. That's God. And so if I can't take that from you, well, then I can't take the real God from you. But if I can take any other thing from you, and you worship it, you have the false God. And I did you a service in taking anything but the reality, because I can't take the reality from you. So all outer services and ceremonies, they mean nothing. Nothing. Go about your Father's business, which is yourself, doing noble things in this world, imagining the best, and it will come to pass. That's why I say, if it seems that I reiterate and restate night after night after night, it's essential. Because if you are perfectly honest with yourself this day, and you observe what you are imagining in the course of one day, you'll be ashamed of what you imagine. And yet you are imagining things you do not want to happen. And yet you will give lip service to the statement, imagining creates reality. And then one moment later, a friend of mine up in San Francisco, she was a friend of a mutual friend, and they didn't get on very well, only at moments. One night, riding with her, we went down, maybe 75 miles down the peninsula for a dinner. Lovely dinner, and all the way back, this very, very heavy fog. You could hardly see a few yards before you. And she was talking of this friend of mine, who she claimed to be a friend of hers. And she would rant against this woman. So and so and so, I wouldn't even print it. You couldn't print it. It burned the page. And then at the end of her statement, she would say, God bless her soul. She kept up the entire 75 miles, blasting this woman, and then she would qualify the whole thing, and it was all forgiven. God bless her soul. So she is still here. The other one has gone from this little section of time, and she's still playing the same part, using her imagination in every way she doesn't want in this world. And things went from bad to worse in her world. And they're still that way. And she can't for one moment believe she's the cause of the phenomena of her life. Oh no, she can't for one moment. And yet I had one long 75-mile drive with her, where it would take a whole lifetime to reap that harvest. What she said in that long drive from dinner back home. So man has a very weak memory, and he doesn't remember when he did these things. But there's a depth in man who does not forget. So you don't recognize your own harvest, but it couldn't make a mistake. Everything is after the identical seed. You plant a seed. What seed was it? Well, you've forgotten what it was. Well, wait till the tree comes up, you'll know. Because it can't be other than what was planted. If I plant an oak, well then the oak is going to spring up into the oak tree. If I plant that sort of an acorn, that's going to be the oak tree. But if I plant something else, well then wait. If I've forgotten what I planted, wait, the harvest will show me. And man denies his own harvest. So I'm telling you that your own wonderful human imagination is God. Why repeat unnumbered stories that I've told you in the past? I could start with new ones, but what? You know the technique. And the technique is simple. If all things are created out of man's human imagination, well then let him start imagining what he wants to be. And if he does, success will follow him. But in the meanwhile, try to prune the plant. Because when you hear for the first time that your imagination is God, it's an awful shock. Because as the poet said, behold this vine, I found it a wild tree, whose wanton strength had swollen into irregular twigs. But I pruned the plant, and then it grew temperate in its vain expense of useless leaves, and knotted, as you see, into these clean, full clusters, to repay the hand that wisely wounded it. So when you first find that the vine spoken of in the Bible, I am the vine of eternity, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser, and you discover, well, that vine is my imagination. For then the whole thing went into leaves, useless leaves and branches. It was not producing grapes. Then I start to prune the tree by observing what I'm imagining in the course of 24 hours. It becomes a habit. Then the next day, I do a little bit better. The third day, better still. By the end of a week, I am in the habit now of watching what I'm imagining. And don't wait, instantly prune it. Stop it. Stop imagining. Don't indulge yourself. I have heard people say to me, but just one more second. It's such a pleasant thing to tell him off. And so in his mind's eye, he's telling off someone, all in his imagination, knowing he's going to reap the fruit of it. Now, if you know that, you aren't going to simply spend an extra 5 seconds of precious time in finishing that emotion, stop that emotion, and get on a new trend. And then you prune the plant. And finally that plant's going to reward you with clean, full clusters because you wisely wounded it. And then you keep that vine going, and the vine will pay enormous dividends. I know from experience. When you go to bed at night, let your last thought be something noble, something wonderful, that you are now, or those you love are now, what you would like to be, and drop off into the deep in that state, and make it a habit. As we are told, you plant a seed, and then the seed becomes an act, and the act becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a character. So if I seem to repeat myself, it's because I have to. Because if anyone here tonight could honestly tell me that in the course of 24 hours, they have observed what they were imagining and had not a thing to find fault with, well, I would like to hear that, and I will not call you a liar because I'm not here to judge. But it would be a marvelous thing if you could tell me that. But I know that all of us are victims of habit, and we get into the habit of this internal conversations that are not pleasant. And we think that no one observes, no one sees. They thought because they did it in the silence that no one knows, when the only reality is their own wonderful human imagination. And that is fully aware of what man is doing, and rewards man, good, bad, or indifferent, with his imaginal act. Now, no one can tell me that you could not tonight start to become, if you want to be prosperous, that's a relative term. What you mean by prosperous would not be what another means by it, but what you, and just take yourself, what would it feel like if it were true? Just what would it feel like? And then go about your business feeling as though it is true. Instead of spending your precious time reading about Howard Hughes. Well, who cares? I asked a friend of mine who asked me if I'm following the story. I said, you know, he doesn't know me. And I don't know him. And I'm quite sure that if I met him, he would not really buy me a sandwich. So what am I concerned about? He doesn't pay my rent, he doesn't buy my clothes, he doesn't contribute to my way of living, and I am supposed to be concerned about what he's doing? He doesn't interest me. None whatsoever. So I must spend my precious time reading about Howard Hughes. My heart almost goes out to the man Irving who wrote the thing, because the so-called wise editors of Life and the wise ones of the other one got taken, and they're so wise, taken for $500,000. And so I'm not saying that I would want to duplicate it in my life, but it almost serves them right to pull that upon the people and throw it. Who cares about Hughes, really? What is his contribution to life? So he has made $2 billion. So what? Hasn't bought you a dinner? Hasn't done anything for you. And so what is your concern? Start right in this room. You're wearing clothes. You're sitting on chairs. You're in a house. Everything here was first only imagined. The clothes you're wearing, the chairs on which you're seated, the building that now houses you, everything here was first only imagined. And then it becomes an objective fact. So objective reality is solely produced through imagining. Now you want to objectify something entirely different from what you have so far. Well, now change the imaginal act. To attempt to change circumstances before I change the imaginal activity is to struggle against the very nature of things. I can't do it because my imaginal activity is producing the objective realities. And I can't change that objective fact until I change what is causing it. And the cause is an unseen imaginal activity. I dared at moments in my life to assume that I had what reason told me I did not, and my senses denied it, but I dared to assume that I had it. And it happened. It came out of the nowhere. It happened. So I taught that principle to others. They applied it, and it happened. But strangely enough, after someone becomes a little bit better off than they were, they reflect upon it, and because it always happens in a perfectly normal, natural manner, they say, oh, well, it would have happened anyway. And then they go sound asleep again. You can give someone a sedative, and you try to awaken them. And for a moment, they're alert, seemingly alert. And while you're talking to them, you're sound asleep again. That's humanity. They're dreaming this dream of life. And they see the fruit of what they've imagined and deny that their imagination produced it. So they go sound asleep again, back upon the negative state. But I'm asking you who come here and persist in coming to observe what you are doing in the course of 24 hours. You're not alert 24 hours, but take, say, 16 hours. If you give 8 hours to sleep, we'll take 16 hours and try to observe what you are imagining. And if you, perchance you catch yourself imagining what you do not wish to experience, stop it. Stop it right there and then, and don't give it an extra second. It may be you're in the midst of an emotion and you'd like to complete the emotion and tell him off completely. Don't. Stop it. Break it, and that causes a sort of a mental abortion, a mental miscarriage, if you break it without exploding the emotion. And when you say, I am, you're actually announcing the fact that you are imagining. That is imagination. That's God. Now let us go into the silence.